What if I told you that one of Silicon Valley's most influential figures once looked on paper like a complete failure?
A kid who couldn't stay awake in class or while doing chores due to an undiagnosed medical condition.
An engineer who got laid off 3 times in 2 years.
A founder who was told he was too valuable to promote.
And a CEO who was asked to step aside right before his own company went public.
Yet, if you've ever heard of Indian founders in Silicon Valley, venture capital opening its door to immigrants, or CEOs with accents being taken seriously,
There's quite a chance you're living in a world Kanwal Rekhi helped build.
Hi, I'm Vaishali.
And I'm Harsh, and this is the Victory Code podcast, where ambition meets direction.
We break down real journeys of people who've been where you are and made it through. Every episode hands you their mindset, their turning point, and their strategies so you never have to figure it out alone.
In today's episode of the Victory Code, we bring you the incredible story of Kanwal Rekhi, the poor boy from Punjab who broke barriers to pave the way for Indian success at Silicon Valley, and a curious case of interracial marriage.
At a time when Indian-American heads of businesses were unheard of, Kanwal Rekhi, an engineer par excellence and a marketing genius, steered his company Excelan to become the first Indian-American owned company to be listed on an exchange in the US, the Nasdaq.
To understand the code of Kanwal Rekhi, you have to go back to 1945, Rawalpindi, currently in Pakistan, where Rekhi was born to an army officer of a low rank. It was a family of 9, living in a home with no running water and a budget so tight it could snap at any moment.
And in the middle of this chaos was a boy who everyone thought was, broken.
Kanwal had a condition no one in the 1950s could name. He would be in the middle of a math lesson or even doing his chores and his eyes would just close. He'd vanish into a deep sleep.
Today, we know it was sleep apnea.
For those who don't know, sleep apnea is a serious sleep disorder where your breathing repeatedly stops and starts. Because your body isn't getting enough oxygen, you never reach deep restorative sleep.
Imagine trying to run a marathon while holding your breath. That was Kanwal's brain every single day. He wasn't lazy, he was exhausted on a cellular level.
But the code started to form in the friction between Kanwal and his father.
Right. He wanted to learn typing, but his father shut it down immediately. In his father's eye, an army officer's son was meant to lead men, not become a clerk hunched over a typewriter.
It's a classic example of the family filter. Sometimes the people closest to us can't see our potential because they're blinded by their own expectations of us.
But while Kanwal's father saw a clerk, his mother, she saw a strategist. His mother turned out to be the shade to his father's harsh heat.
She saw his brilliance in math when no one else did. She made him the CFO of the household. She handed this lazy boy the family's entire monthly budget of 200 rupees.
Well, to put that in perspective, even adjusted for inflation, that's like asking a kid to manage $220 to keep 10 people alive for a month. Most adults would panic. Kanwal, he started coding a system.
He built a hierarchy of survival. First, the non-negotiables, grains and pulses. Then, the essentials, vegetables and meat. And only then, if there was anything left, a tiny luxury, a single movie ticket for one family member.
But here's the genius part. No matter how thin the money was stretched, he always set aside 5 rupees or about $6 for an emergency fund.
He was learning how to make a little go a long way, a skill that would later save a dying company in Silicon Valley.
As Kanwal says today, life has a funny way of preparing you for your future. He wasn't just buying lentils, he was learning how to prioritize under pressure.
And this brings us to our first victory code. Constraint is a competitive advantage. Tell us about it, Vaishali.
Most people think they need more resources to win. Kanwal's code says the opposite. Managing a deficit teaches you to prioritize. If you can't manage $200, you're going to have a tough time managing $200 million.
And you know what? If this idea resonates with you, there's a book that unpacks this beautifully. It's called Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much by Senthil Mullainathan and Elder Shafir, two brilliant researchers who actually studied how constraint sharpens the mind It's a dense read, but absolutely worth it.
And if you prefer listening over reading, there's a wonderful podcast episode Kamal himself has spoken at length in various TIE or TIE Global Talks available on YouTube. Just search Kanwal Rekhi TIE or TIE and you'll find recordings where he speaks about growing up with almost nothing and what that built in him. Hearing it from the man himself hits differently.
Kanwal was always ahead of the curve. He finished high school so early that he was actually too young to even sit for the IIT entrance exams, the exams to enter the most prestigious tech colleges in India. Yes, the same IIT which you will find on the resumes of most Indian tech leaders around the world.
Imagine the frustration. You're ready to sprint, but the world tells you to sit in a waiting room. He ended up at a local normal college for a year just to kill time, until he became eligible.
But even after he crushed the exams and got into IIT Bombay, which by the way has a lower chance of getting into than Harvard, one of the hardest admissions to score on the planet, the person whose approval he wanted most still wasn't impressed: his father.
To his dad, the army man, IIT sounded just like another school for clerks. He didn't see the prestige, he saw a son avoiding a real career in the military.
Until someone whom his dad respected told him what a terrific achievement it was. It happened during a conversation with a high-ranking army officer. The officer mentioned that his own son had tried to get into IIT and had failed miserably. He looked at Kanwal's father and said, "You have no idea how brilliant your son must be to get a seat there."
It's a powerful note on human nature. Sometimes your own family cannot see your value until someone they respect validates it.
This brings us to the second victory code. Optimize for outcomes, ignore opinions.
Kanwal didn't stop pursuing IIT just because his father didn't understand it. He knew the outcome, the world of global tech and engineering, would recognize his value even if the opinions around him weren't conducive.
If people think what you're building won't work, keep building anyway. Outcomes don't need permission. Opinions eventually adjust.
This one connects so deeply to a book I keep recommending to almost everyone I meet. Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. She essentially argues that the people who thrive are the ones who define themselves by where they are going and not by what others currently think of them. It's the academic foundation for exactly what Kanwal was living.
And for something more anecdotal, there's a brilliant documentary series on Netflix called The Playbook. Interviews with elite coaches who all essentially say the same thing. External opinions are noise. Internal conviction is signal. Worth watching on a weekend.
Great recommendation, actually.
Kanwal has an IIT degree. He's one of the brightest engineers in India. Naturally, you would think he'd be looking at the Ivy League, MIT, Stanford, the big names.
But remember that 200 rupee budget? That 200 rupee budget never really left him. Kanwal wasn't looking for a trophy on the wall. He was balancing the books of his own ambition for a sustainable future.
While other students were chasing prestige, Kanwal was chasing a scholarship. He needed a way to get to the US without draining his family's resources.
Enter Michigan Technological University.
It's located in Horton, Michigan, on a peninsula jutting out into Lake Superior. It is one of the coldest, snowiest places in the United States. We are talking about 200 inches of snow a year.
Imagine this, you've spent your whole life in the sweltering heat of India and now you're in America, which feels like you've been suddenly dropped into a frozen tundra where the air hurts your face.
Why did he do it? Because Michigan Tech offered him financial assistance and well, it was his cheapest option.
This brings us to another victory code based on his Michigan move. Choose the ladder, not the label.
In a world obsessed with status, Kanwal chose the path that gave him the most leverage with the least debt. He didn't need a famous school to make him a titan. He just needed a foot in the door.
And this is an idea that Malcolm Gladwell explores at length in his book David and Goliath. He has this fascinating section about why attending a less celebrated school can sometimes give you a strategic edge. You become a big fish in a smaller pond, and that confidence compounds.
Also, if you are someone who's making a college or career decision right now, and this idea is personally relevant, there's a really grounded episode of How I Built This Podcast with Guy Raz, where founders consistently talk about how their non-IB paths shape their scrappiness. Worth a listen.
Perfect. Now back to Kanwal, because this is where the tutorial ended and the boss fight began.
Kanwal, having graduated, decided to commit a classic early career mistake. he actually turns down a job offer from IBM. You don't turn down IBM today. Forget about it in the 1970s.
Young grads, do not try this at home.
He thought he knew better. He went for other opportunities. And then the hammer dropped. He got fired.
And once again.
And again.
Between 1970 and 1972, he was laid off 3 times.
Okay, let's just say he wasn't job hopping. The jobs were hopping away from him.
On the East Coast, he was just another line on a spreadsheet. Every time he felt he had a footing, the rug was pulled. It was exhausting.
That's when he made the decision that changed tech history forever. He packed up and headed west to a place that was just starting to be called Silicon Valley.
1971, San Jose. Kanwal Rekhi joins a defense tech company building flight simulators for US Army and Navy pilots.
Where mistakes don't kill you, but they train you to survive them.
But Kanwal was traumatized by those East Coast layoffs. For 3 years, even as he was getting promoted as an engineer, he was still sending out job applications every single week.
Kanwal and his wife Anne wanted a family. He was terrified of instability. He was living in a state of high performance paranoia. I'm sure quite a few of us are familiar with it, especially when you have doubts in your mind about your capabilities. I almost always feel this when I'm pitted against a new challenge. Will I be able to do this? What if everything goes wrong? Am I good enough?
Yeah, that's not a great feeling. In fact, that can impact your confidence and hamper your growth. But luckily for Kanwal, something happened in those labs which helped Kanwal get over the paranoia. He developed a reputation. His designs were so accurate, so complex, and so flawlessly executed that they worked the first time, almost every single time.
Technically speaking, it wasn't just luck. It was Kanwal's knack for accuracy and diligence. Usually, you build, it breaks, and you fix it. Kanwal skipped the breaking part. In the world of hardware, that's very unlikely. His turnaround was so fast, his colleagues gave him a nickname, the Magician.
By 1974, the paranoia finally died. He realized he didn't need a backup plan because he had become indispensable. He wasn't just another worker anymore, he was the code the company couldn't run without.
This brings us to Kanwal's quote from his magician years. Excellence is the only insurance.
You can't control the economy, you can't control the management. The only protection is becoming so good that losing you feels dangerous.
Kanwal didn't find safety in a contract. He built it line by line, system by system. And for a while, it worked.
If you want to go deep on this idea, there is one book I'd put above all others on this topic. So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. The title is literally the distillation of this victory quote. Newport argues passionately that passion follows mastery, not the other way around. It's a must read.
And from a more psychological angle, Anders Ericsson's research on deliberate practice, summarized well in the book Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise, explains exactly the mechanism behind how Kanwal became the magician. It's not talent, it's targeted, intentional repetition.
But what happens when even excellence isn't enough to break the glass ceiling? By 1980, Kanwal was the undisputed technical backbone of his company. He was the magician. He had spent nearly a decade perfecting their systems. But here's the paradox. While his designs were soaring, his career, it was grounded.
If you're listening to this and you've ever been told you're indispensable in your current role, pay close attention.
Kanwal saw people he had personally trained being promoted to management. So he did what any rational high performer would do. He walked into his manager's office and asked for a promotion.
The response he got is a classic piece of corporate gaslighting, if you will. According to Kanwal's own accounts and his interviews, his manager told him, "Kanwal, you're too good of an engineer. We can't promote you because no one else can do what you do in the lab."
It's the kind of compliment that lands like a punch. They didn't want him gone, they wanted him exactly where he was, deep in the engine room, fixing the impossible, not out front representing the company.
And for a while, he absorbed it, until something happened that made the situation impossible to ignore.
A British immigrant, someone Kanwal had trained, mentored, and supported, was promoted over him. After nearly a decade of loyalty and the magician status, the company didn't choose the best qualified leader. They chose the most culturally familiar one, until the immigrant left and started his own company.
This made Kanwal extremely restless. The stability he had craved for years now felt like a chokehold. If someone who he trained could become an entrepreneur, what was stopping him? He sat down with his wife, Anne, and told her he wanted to quit. He wanted to start something of his own.
Now, this is the part of the story most hustle podcasts skip. Anne didn't just say, "Go for it, honey." She became the anchor. She reminded him of the mortgage, the responsibilities, and the family they were building.
She didn't stop him, but she made the stakes very clear.
Kanwal didn't jump blindly. He began to strategize his exit and how to start something of his own. This brings us to Kanwal's quote from his exit from the job. Don't let your excellence become your cage.
If you are so good at your job that they can't afford to promote you, you aren't an asset. You are a prisoner. Kanwal's quote says, when the ceiling won't break, it's time to change the building.
He stopped trying to prove his worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding it. He took his magician hands and started building his own stage.
This particular quote hits very close to home for a lot of people, and there's one resource I'd recommend for anyone sitting in that exact situation. It's a TED Talk by Emily Wapnick called Why Some of Us Don't Have One True Calling. It's not a perfect match, but her argument that identities built around one narrow skill can be traps is a deeply relevant one to what Kanwal was experiencing.
And for those who want something more practical, a step-by-step guide to making the leap from employee to entrepreneur, the $100 Startup by Chris Gallibo is a fantastic starting point. It's grounded, realistic, and does not romanticize the process.
But before we get into that, let's also take a moment to appreciate the challenges he was facing on the personal front. His relationship with Anne and the challenges of interracial marriage back in the day. Today, Kanwal lives in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Silicon Valley. It's a life he built over 5 decades with his wife, Anne.
Anne recently passed away, leaving behind a 54-year partnership that quite literally had to fight the law just to exist.
To understand that partnership, we have to go back to 1971. Kanwal and Anne were ready to get married, and what should have been simple felt almost impossible.
Just 4 years earlier, interracial marriages had still been illegal in large part of the United States. It took the Loving versus Virginia case in 1967 to change the law.
On paper, America had finally said yes.
Socially, it was still shouting absolutely not.
They were in Florida trying to find someone to officiate the wedding, and door after door kept closing for Kanwal. No priest, no minister, no official willing to sign.
There's an old Urdu saying, "Jab Miyan Biwi razi, to kya karega kazi," which roughly translates to, when the couple has said yes, who's the minister to say no?
Turns out in 1970s Florida, the minister's no mattered very, very much.
And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn.
Because Kanwal eventually found someone willing to marry them.
Not through church, not through family.
Through tennis.
Kanwal's tennis partner happened to be a minister.
The minister saw their hearts before he saw their races, and he agreed to officiate the marriage. I mean, what are the odds?
What are the odds? But, I'm compelled to mention here that Anne's father and grandfather, they refused to attend. It's a bit of an irony that outsiders come in your support while your own family shuns you.
Especially so in this case as an individual with a religious authority who would be considered orthodox or conservative sees past the racial differences to champion love, while individuals who would revere him were not willing to look past the differences. I think leaders like these enable us as collective human beings to grow and become more inclusive of each other.
Absolutely. So Kanwal and Anne began their life together without family support, 3 layoffs to begin with.
And a world that quietly expected them not to last.
And they lasted 54 years.
Anne wasn't just a witness to Kanwal's success, she was quite the architect of his resilience.
There's a code hidden in that kind of partnership. Legacy is built on unshakable anchor.
Anne was that anchor. She reminded him of the weight of responsibility without ever clipping his wings.
This idea of behind-the-scenes partner shaping a public success is beautifully documented in Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's not about entrepreneurship, but about the invisible work that goes into holding someone and yourself together through enormous pressure. It's deeply moving.
And on the research side, there's a wonderful paper by Nicholas Christakis, also available as a talk, called The Hidden Influence of Social Networks. It's a reminder that who you are surrounded by, especially your closest anchor, literally shapes your outcomes.
And so their life was pretty much stable now. He was a magician, making really good money and working with a very good company. He had arrived. If you grew up in India, you know this emotion. That moment when life finally stops shaking and you whisper to yourself, now it's stable.
And then he does the most un-Indian thing imaginable. He destabilizes it on purpose. Because if there's one thing middle-class Indians are trained to protect, it's stability.
I guess stability is how middle-class families translate love into safety.
Oh wow, that's quite an interesting way to put it. I'm going to steal that one.
I will tell you where to send the royalty checks. So, it's 1980, Kanwal Rekhi has a mortgage, 2 small kids, and a paycheck that finally signals we are okay. And then he pulls a move that sounds almost rebellious. He takes a steep pay cut to join a financially backed semiconductor startup.
This wasn't cosmetic. It was a hard reset. From $75,000 a year to $45,000. In today's terms, that's walking away from a $300,000 lifestyle to accepting a $170,000 one.
Why would someone raised on a 200 rupee survival budget, choose to shrink his safety net?
Because stability can quietly freeze you in place. Kanwal had a label, the defense guy. In defense work, perfection is sacred. But efficiency and cost, not so much.
Defense builds for certainty, old tech, proven systems, zero surprises. The commercial world thrives on the opposite: speed, cost pressure, and customers who don't wait.
In business, perfection doesn't win, momentum does. Products survive by shipping and scaling. Kanwal knew how to build machines that never failed. Now he needed to learn how to build machines people would actually buy. Before he could start a business, he had to learn how to build something that sells.
This is where his immigrant instinct kicked in. This new company wasn't for validation, it was for tuition.
And the classroom was chaos. The semiconductor startup was misfiring on every front. Broken systems, bad computers, angry customers. Most people would run, but Kanwal, he leaned in.
For 6 months, Kanwal lived inside that disorder, learning how to strip complexity down into something manufacturable and market-ready.
If this reverse gear move tells us anything, it's this. Comfort is not safety, it's stagnation.
We are taught to climb up the ladder, up the pay scale, up the status. But Kanwal realized that if he stayed at his job, he was essentially a king in a very small, very specific room.
Kanwal didn't want a seat at the table. He wanted to build the whole room. And you can't do that if you're too afraid to leave the seat you already have.
One book that perfectly captures the spirit of this code is Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. He makes the case that people who deliberately move across fields, even at a cost, develop a kind of adaptive intelligence that narrow specialists often lack. Kanwal's tuition years is a textbook example.
And if you want a very watchable version of this, there's a Stanford GSB talk on YouTube by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, where he talks about managing your career like an entrepreneur, deliberately accepting short-term risk for long-term optionality. It's about 40 minutes and absolutely worth your time.
Actually, it's great stuff. Now let's get to the part of the story that I think is just cinematic: the founding of Excelan. Let's look at what the industry was like in 1982. Silicon Valley is obsessed. Every magazine, every garage, every nerd is talking about the PC. IBM has just launched their personal computer and the world thinks the win is having a machine on every desk.
But Kanwal is looking at those desks and seeing islands. Thousands of powerful machines, totally isolated.
While the world was building the units, Kanwal was building the connective tissue. He wasn't thinking about the computer, he was thinking about the conversation between the computers.
This is where he founded Excelan. And he did it with 2 other Indians. No white partner for optics, just raw engineering horsepower.
Let's talk tech, but in layman's terms. Back then, if you wanted 2 different computers to talk to each other, you basically had to perform open heart surgeries on their motherboard. It took years.
The major industry giants were working on Ethernet boards, the hardware that allows networking. Their timeline, 3 to 5 years.
Kanwal used a plug-and-play philosophy even before, that was a term. He built a board that didn't require you to overhaul your entire system. You just added it to what you had already,
What took the massive corporations half a decade, Kanwal did it in 4 weeks.
He wasn't just fast, he was visionary. He saw 20 years into the future. He knew that the value of a computer is zero if it can't share its data.
Great product? Check. Brilliant team? Check. Capital? Zero.
This is the immigrant wall. In 1982, three Indian engineers with no business track record didn't look like founders. They looked like a risk.
No VCs would call them back. Bank loans were a joke. They had to scrape together money from friends and family. For almost 8 months, nothing seemed to work.
Until they walked into the office of John Bosch at Bay Partners. Bosch wasn't just a spreadsheet guy, he was a gut guy. He looks at the hardware, he looks at Kanwal.
And then he drops a bomb. He doesn't offer a small bridge loan. He offers a total takeover of the problem. He says, I'll give you $2 million, but I want 50% of your company.
Bosch looks at his watch. He tells Kanwal, you have 15 minutes to decide.
Kanwal didn't need 15 minutes. He took 15 seconds.
He knew that 50% of a $1 billion pie is worth infinitely more than 100% of a company that is, well, dead.
It was a masterclass in decisive pragmatism. Bosch later bragged that he discovered Indians in Silicon Valley. He made 100 times his money on that 15-minute hunch.
Well, congratulations, Bosch.
Here is the code from that 15-second deal. Speed of decision is a competitive advantage.
Most founders die by the analysis paralysis. They haggle over percentages while the window of opportunity slams shut. Kanwal knew that the money wasn't just cash, it was velocity.
There's a concept in military strategy called the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Developed by fighter pilot John Boyd. It's been adopted widely in business strategy, and it essentially explains why speed of decision is often more valuable than the perfect decision. There's a great summary article on Furnham Street's website, fs.blog. Just search OODA loop and you'll find it.
And for a more founder-facing take, there's an episode on the Tim Ferriss show with Mark Andreessen, one of Silicon Valley's most legendary investors, where he talks about exactly this. Why founders who move fastest often win regardless of the exact terms. Really worth listening to.
Both in the show notes. Now let's talk about what happens after the money arrived, because money, as usual, did not solve everything. A few years in, Excelan was stalling. They had a Yale-educated partner handling marketing, but the sales just weren't moving.
Kanwal realized the problem wasn't the product, it was the communication. Now the marketing was selling features, but the clients needed solutions.
Kanwal parted ways with his partner and took over marketing himself. An engineer doing marketing in the 80s. That was unheard of.
But he was better at it. Why? Because he could communicate to the prospective clients what problem was he going to solve, rather than what features was in his product. He landed Wall Street, the most demanding client on earth. Suddenly, 40% of Excelan's business was coming from the financial capital of the world.
He brought in Dwayne Murray. Together, they realized sales didn't understand the tech, so they did something radical. He routed all sales calls directly to the engineers.
He turned his magicians into frontmen. He empowered his people to be problem solvers and not just builders.
And Excelan is ready. The finish line is in sight. The Nasdaq IPO. The first time an Indian-owned company would ever list.
But the board of directors drop a bomb. They tell Kanwal, to go public, we need a traditional CEO.
Now, Kanwal was furious. He had built the boards, the team, the sales, and the vision. Now, at the moment of victory, they wanted him to step aside for optics.
The IPO market was declining, tech was shaky, the board's logic was cold. Do you want to be a CEO or do you want to be rich?
It was the ultimate test of ego versus outcome. Kanwal had to decide if his legacy was his title or the success of the 100+ people who were to follow him.
So he stepped aside. He let a new CEO take the podium. Excelan went public. Kanwal became a multi-millionaire.
A seasoned veteran from HP takes the CEO seat. On paper, it was exactly what Wall Street wanted. A safe, traditional leader.
The IPO in 1987 was a financial success, but the operation, that was a different story. The culture began to drift, the innovation slowed. Within a short time, the safe choice decided to move on.
Kanwal could not see the company he built with so much love and passion suffer like this. He took the helm again. He stabilized the ship, refocused the engineering, and 2 years later, he orchestrated the ultimate exit. Novell, the networking giant of the era, bought Excelan for roughly $250 million.
You'd think that was the finish line, but for Kanwal, the real fight was just beginning.
Through the struggle, he had hit walls that weren't made of tech, but of perception. He saw that the world viewed Indians as the ultimate back office wizards, the magicians who could fix any code but were never invited to sit at the head of the table.
It wasn't just a glass ceiling, it was a systemic bug in the industry's DNA. And Kanwal, he didn't want a patch. He was there to write the entire operating system, and the first line of that new code was written during a lunch that changed everything.
It's 1992, a simple lunch with a handful of other South Asian entrepreneurs. No grand plan, just a conversation about how to help the next guy.
The lunch became TIE or TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs.
Kanwal became the godfather. He didn't just give advice, he gave resources. He mentored, he invested, and he was brutally honest. He taught engineers how to think like CEOs.
He helped launch 6 IPOs. He helped build unicorns.
He turned Silicon Valley into a place where an accent was no longer a barrier, but a brand of excellence.
Most people think a victory ends when the money hits the bank account. But for Kanwal, the ultimate victory was ensuring the next kid from Bombay or the next immigrant in the frozen tundra didn't have to struggle as hard as he did.
He went back to the places that gave him his start. In 2000, he donated $5 million to Michigan Tech.
And then he donated $3 million to IIT Bombay to establish the Kanwal Rekhi School of Information Technology. It's poetic, isn't it?
The world started taking notice of his style long ago. In 1987, the same year that he rang the bell at Nasdaq, he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Arthur Young and Venture magazine.
And later, in 2003, he received the Beena Chaudhary Award for Distinguished Service. It wasn't just for his engineering or his marketing. It was for the contribution to the human spirit of entrepreneurship.
We leave you with the final victory quotes from Kanwal Rekhi's phenomenal life.
Things are never as good as you think and never as bad as you feel. Keep a level head, the tide will turn. And when it does, you need to be holding the wheel.
Kanwal Rekhi started as a boy who couldn't stay awake. He ended up as the man who woke up an entire subcontinent to its own potential.
He didn't just list a company on the Nasdaq. He listed a new way of being an immigrant in America. If today's episode changed how you see what's possible, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you're not already subscribed, well, now is the time. For every episode of the Victory Code, we take one extraordinary life, decode the decisions that made it, and extract the principles you can actually use.
Not inspiration, systems. Not motivation, codes. The specific mental frameworks and decision patterns that turn ordinary circumstances into extraordinary outcomes. I'm Harsh.
And I'm Vaishali, and this is the Victory Code podcast.